بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين
اللهم صل على محمد
اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علمك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. I think we reached Al-Khamis, yeah? The fifth point is about the rule of divine grace. You know, we have Qa'idatul Lutf, divine grace, divine favor. And we had this previously in our discussion about aqaid, we had this, I think. First, we have to see what do we mean by lutf. It has a technical definition. Whenever lutf, with all the requirements that we have it in technical definition, is conceived, our reason, our intellect tells that it is necessary for God to have such grace or favor. Necessary not in the sense that we are forcing God or we are imposing an obligation on God. It means that from someone like God, who is very good and very wise, you only can expect to have this lutf. Okay? So this is very important. Whenever we say it is necessary for God to do this, it doesn't mean that we are forcing God, because Asharites had this idea that God has no moral, as a standard to observe. Because they thought if we say God has to observe moral standards, we are making God inferior to those standards. But we say no. Actually, this is our understanding of essence of God, that He would do good things. God would never deceive. Why? Not because we are forcing Him or there is a police forcing Him. He would not deceive because to deceive would not be compatible with that beautiful, good, benevolent essence of God. Okay? Is it clear? So, if there is lutf with all the requirements that inshallah we are going to explain, it's necessary for God to provide His servants with that lutf or grace or favor. So we have to see what is the technical definition of lutf, and then why we say it is necessary. So we need to explain two things. What do we mean by lutf and why is it necessary? في أنه تعالى يجب عليه اللطف. So the fifth point here in this chapter about divine justice is that God the Almighty is necessary for Him to have lutf, grace. What is lutf? وهو ما يقرب العبد إلى الطاعة. Alhamdulillah, you are reaching the beginning of, studying Islamic sciences. Because so far mostly you have been doing muqaddamat. So it's very important, and inshallah you should appreciate that. Alhamdulillah, you have reached this point, and inshallah you have to carry. Sometimes you want to climb mountain to enjoy. For example, you want to go to Mount Everest. You have to go thousands of miles till you reach the bottom of the mount. So alhamdulillah, now you have reached the bottom and you have few steps also climbed. So it's very important. Just look inshallah on top of mount and inshallah continue. Okay? If now you go back and leave, this, it's Not right. So, alhamdulillah, you are not beginning of really Islamic studies. It's just starting, after 2-3 years now, you are just starting. ما يقرب العبد إلى الطاعة, anything that brings the servant of God nearer to obedience. In the end of the day, still you have to decide to do it, because as we will say, if you are pushed to doing, this is not good. You have to do it. But anything that can help you in obedience, provided that it has other conditions, it is necessary for God. Like if you want to educate people, you would not just say, you must be educated. So I tell them the taklif. Yeah? What do? You try to provide them with anything that can help them in this process, but just letting them to make the last decision. Okay? If you want your child to study, if you want your child to say his prayer, if you want your child to be a good person, you try to provide him with every facility, every guidance, every learning. Just you stop before it becomes like enforcement. You don't want to enforce, so that the child has no voluntary, role. You want him to be in charge, but you tell him what he needs to know. You provide him with facilities, with friends, everything that you can provide. So, ما يقرب العبد إلى الطاعة, whatever takes the servant of God nearer to the act of obedience. ويبعده عن المعصية, and takes him away from disobedience, from sins. ولا حظ له في التمكين, and has no role in making him capable of doing ibadah and ta'ah, or capable of avoiding sin. Why we say it should not be something that is a condition for being able? Because if it is a condition for being able, then without that there is no taklif. Remember we said there are general conditions for taklif, like knowledge, power, ability, aql. If someone is majnoon, for example, is not rational, is not aql. If someone is mad, he has no taklif. So, if you provide him with rational understanding or with aql, or if you provide him with power, we don't call this lutf. Why? Because without this there was no taklif. Lutf is when taklif is there, ta'ah is defined, act of disobedience is defined, and you want to give him some help in following the path of obedience or avoiding the path of disobedience. Anything without which he cannot move towards obedience, or he has no taklif at all, it's not considered as lutf. So one condition for lutf is that la hadha lahu fit tamkin. It has no role in making that person capable of doing something. So it should not be one of the conditions of taklif. وَلَا يَبْلُغُ الْإِلْجَاء. Another condition of lutf is it should help, but not force. The level of pushing, you are pushing, you are encouraging, you are helping, facilitating, but it should not reach of forcing. Ilja means you force him to do it. لتوقف غرض المكلف. مكلف. What is the difference between mukallaf and mukallaf? Mukallaf is the legislator, the one who asks us to do something. Mukallaf is us. We are mukallaf, means we have an obligation. Mukallaf is the legislator, the lawmaker. Why lutf is wajib? Rationally, it's necessary because the purpose of legislator depends on this. He wants us to do ibadah, ta'ah. He wants us not to do haram. Therefore, he should help us in this process. But his help should not be by forcing, imposing. لتوقف غرض المكلف عليه فإن المريد لفعل من غيره. The one who asks, who wills, murid means wants, yeah? The one who wants action from someone other than himself. If you want someone to do something, إذا علم أنه لا يفعله إلا بفعل يفعله المريد. He knows that the other party would not do it unless he himself does something. من غير مشقة. I have to do something and it is not something that makes life miserable for me. لو لم يفعله. If he knows that the other party would not do it, and still he would not do this extra thing so that the other party would do it, it means that his own purpose is not achieved. If you really wanted him to do this, and you know that without you doing this extra bit, he's not going to do it, so there's a problem. You are not a wise person. If you wanted him to do it, you would do this extra bit. If you want him to study, you would not just ask him, you should study. You provide him with teacher, you provide him with book, because this is the extra bit that can help him. But even with providing book, teacher, he still may decide to study or not. So there must remain a chance for him to exercise his free will. So, in al-murid, I repeat, in al-murid, لفعل, the one who wants an action min ghayrihi, from someone other than himself. Like Allah wants something from us. Okay? إذا علم, if he knows that the other person would not do it except unless the one who wants, like Allah, does something, بفعل, he does something, this murid does something, and it's not mashaqqa, it's not something that makes life terrible. If he doesn't do this extra bit, لَكَانَ نَاقِضًا لِقَرَزَيْهِ, he has disregarded his own purpose. He has violated his own purpose. وَهُوَ قَبِيهٌ عَقْلًا. This is not good, not acceptable. It's immoral, it's ugly from a rational point of view. Okay, this is all the main text. Now we go to the commentary. Page 72. So we go to the middle of the page, just under the line. قال الخامس في أنه تعالى يجب عليه اللطف. أقول. Who is saying أقول? Father المقداد رحمة الله عليه. أقول ما يتوقف عليه إيقاء الطاعة وارتفاع المعصية. What is needed for bringing obedience or for removal of sin, disobedience. So whatever is needed, whatever obedience or non-sin depend on it, means whatever is needed, whatever is required. تارة يكون التوقف عليه لازما. Sometimes it is something without which it's impossible to do it. You cannot have ta'ah. Like shurut taklif, like aql, like knowledge, power. Those things we are not calling this is lutf to provide them with, because without them there is no taklif at all. تارة يكون التوقف عليه لازما وبدونه لا يقع الفعل وذلك كالقدرة والآلة. It's something that is necessary, without which we cannot have obedience, we cannot avoid haram. The action would not happen, like power or having the means. Ala. Ala means means. You know, sometimes for an action, some means are needed. وَتَارَةً لَا يَكُونُ كَذَلِكَ. It's not that it's impossible to do it without this. بل يكون المكلف باعتبار الطاعة المتوقف عليه أدنى وأقرب إلى فعل الطاعة وارتفاع المعصية. You can do it without this, but by having this, you would be closer. You would be closer. Adna means nearer, closer, aqrab. So it's not a necessary condition, but it is something that helps you, makes you in a better position to do it.
Sheikh, means that the
Lutf.
give him benefit to be closer
Yes.
to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So lutf is anything that is not a necessary requirement, but it is facilitating obedience. Anything that facilitates and would not make that person enforced or imposed on him, that's to be provided as a lutf, as a favor, but this favor is rationally necessary. But anything without which that person is totally unable to do it, we don't call this is lutf, because without this he cannot do it. So there must be no taklif if he cannot do it. وذلك هو اللطف فقوله ولا حظ له في التمكين, when we said that it has no role, it's not required for enabling him, refers to the first part, the first type. Because the first type, lahu hazzun في التمكين. Yeah, the first part is needed for enabling. The second type, la hazza lahu. Okay, for the first type, kal-qudra. Qudra is something without which you have no taklif. Yeah, if someone has no qudra, has no taklif. فَإِنَّهَا لَيْسَتْ لُطْفًا فِي الْفِعْلِ. This is not a favor to say, you should be given power. No. This is shartan fi imkan. This is a condition for being able to do something. So it's not lutf. وَقَوْلُهُ. Why he mentioned another condition? He said, لَا حَزَّ لَهُ فِي التَّمْكِينِ. This was one modifier, one condition. The other condition was, it should not reach the point of, level of forcing. Elja. Elja means pushing him towards the action without any chance of resistance. وَقَوْلُهُ وَلَا يَبْلُغُ الْإِلْجَاءَ لأنه لو بلغ الإلجاء, because it reaches the point of pushing by force, لكان منافيا للتكليف. Then this contradicts taklif, because taklif means you make a person aware, but at the same time he has to be free. Yeah? Do angels have taklif? No. Angels have no taklif, because angels just do good things. There is no wajib or haram for them. Okay? إذا تقرر هذا, if whatever we said is established, settles in your mind, تقرر. تقرر comes from qarar, means if it has settled in your mind. So I hope your mind is not boiling. It's settled. You understood. فَعْلَمْ. So if you have understood so far, so please be informed. أن اللطف Okay. This favor or grace, which is the extra bit for making ta'ah easier and making the person nearer to ta'ah, تارة يكون من فعل الله. It is sometimes an action of God. فيجب عليه. So it becomes necessary for God. Again, as I said in the beginning, when we say something is necessary for God, it's not in the sense that someone is forcing God, imposing on God. It means that this is a requirement of His good essence. Like when we say كَتَبَ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ الرَّحْمَةِ. What does it mean? It doesn't mean that God makes a law for Himself. Yeah? It means that this is a requirement of His essence. Okay. So, sometimes this is something related to divine action, so God has to do it. فَيَجِبُ عَلَيْهِ. وَتَارَةً يَكُونُ مِنْ فِعْلِ الْمُكَلَّفِ. Sometimes mukallaf himself has to do something that helps him in getting nearer to ta'ah. Did you understand? Sometimes God has to do something like sending prophet, sending revelation, sending book, giving us instructions. So then God would do this because it is rationally necessary. Sometimes God knows that if we do something, it is helpful in our pursuit of ta'ah. So then, what should we do here in this case? What is needed here? God doesn't need to do anything. We have to do something. So what is then necessary on God?
To give a benefit, to give help.
To let us know that we should do this. God should let us know that we should do this. Because maybe we don't understand ourselves. So He tells us, do this so that you would be in a better position for ta'ah. Okay? Or maybe you understand yourself, but you need push. You need encouragement. Okay? This can be, of course, even in our, not only with God, can be with our life. For example, for your pursuit of happiness and perfection, you have to learn. Okay? You have to learn. Then your teacher knows that if you do mubahasa, I don't need to do mubahasa. If you do mubahasa, it's muqarrib, it helps you. So what is my role then? I have to tell you. Who has to do mubahasa? You have to do mubahasa. Okay? So I have to come to class. I have to provide you with teacher, classroom. That is the first type. So Hadi Lutf requires that we do all these things. But the second type is that you have to do something, but still we have a role. We have to tell you. Okay? So we have to tell you. So, تارة يكون من فعل المكلف. You have to do mubahisa, for example. But فيجب عليه تعالى, the one who is your educator, of course it can be God, but it can be, as I said, in day-to-day life, it can be some teacher, parents. فيجب عليه تعالى إشعاره به وإيجابه عليه. Allah says, you have to do this. All the takalif from God are indeed to inform us what we have to do to get closer to perfection. God has great favor upon us by telling us, you have to do these things, you have to avoid these things. Because we may not understand ourselves, or even if we understand, maybe we are not that determined. If teacher tells you to do this and not to do that, if a doctor says eat this, don't eat this, it's all favor. Okay? So تارة يكون من فعل المكلف فيجب عليه تعالى إشعاره به وإيجابه عليه. So now you realize why I so much emphasize on mubahasa. Because I have a rational duty to tell you whatever can help you in your study. Okay? وتارة يكون من فعل غيرهما. Sometimes the third type is neither the one who has loved, is like educator, doctor, or in the case of God has to do something, or the person who is mukallaf has to do something. Another person, a third person. تارة يكون من فعل غيرهما means a third party has to do something. فيشترط في التكليف العلم به. For example, God knows that your father or mother have to do something. It's not God doing something, which is the first type. It's not that you have to do something. It's a third party. For example, your father, your mother should do something to help you. God asked the parents to do this. Okay? So, lutf of God, grace of God requires to tell your parents to help you with your pursuit of perfection. Okay? So much Islam encourages parents to help their children to grow physically and mentally, psychologically, spiritually, intellectually. In every aspect they should grow, and parents should help. So the lutf of God here requires parents to do something. Okay? فيشترط في التكليف العلم به وإيجاب الله ذلك الفعل على ذلك الغير. God asked the third party to do this, and God rewards the third party. So if you help your children in their education, in their progress, you will be rewarded. Okay? So, basically whatever we need for our progress, whether it is needed to be done by us or by God, by a third party, God takes care of all of this and helps us. Okay? وَإِنَّمَا قُلْنَا بِوُجُوبِ ذَلِكَ كُلِّهِ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Why we said this is necessary for God? Yes?
Sorry, just a question on the first point. So, the lutf of Allah is through three different channels. The first one, Allah does something directly, but not from the part that is the necessity of doing the taklif, for example, giving power, etc. The second one, He asks or gives knowledge or reminds the person something which is good for them.
Yes.
And number three is through someone else. Going back to the first point, the example that you gave is, for example, sending revelation or sending messengers. But are those not necessary for the human being to kind of do the taklif or do what Allah has asked him? If there was no messengers and there was no revelation, he wouldn't be able to do.
But taklif itself is also lutf. Taklif is lutf. If we were just following our aql and our moral conscience, we could still reach happiness. But God would still provide us with revelation, prophets, scripture, sharia, to enable us to understand the path of happiness more clearly and to go to higher levels of happiness, and also to provide us with sanction. Otherwise, even if there was no prophet and no revelation, still you could understand by yourself that you have to be honest, you have to be truthful, you have to be kind, you have to worship God. You could understand by yourself.
But there's no taklif.
There is rational taklif. Religious taklif is to help towards implementation of rational taklif. In usul, I mentioned for you this idea that all religious commands are indeed irshadatun ila al-awamir al-aqliyah.
Indeed. Yeah.
They help you to move towards what you could understand by yourself. So even if you had no religion, still you had to be pious and virtuous and worship God. So religion has come to help us with this. This is why mutakallimin say Qa'idiyya Lutf requires God sends prophets, sends books, sends religion. It means that without this still you could be morally responsible.
But the thing is, by him revealing something, yes, it's lutf, but at the same time, then there is punishment if you do not follow it. Whilst if there was nothing and it was just my intellect.
Any favor brings responsibility.
Okay, so that favor is a necessity. So it's a lutf of Allah, which is necessary.
It's a necessity of His benevolence, not necessity of taklif. Because it helps, and He's a kind and caring and loving God, it's necessary. We don't have any right over Him to claim. So it's not necessary because it's a matter of justice, a matter of wisdom. He has a purpose, and that is to help us to reach perfection. So it's necessary to provide us with this. Yeah. You had a question? Okay. وَإِنَّمَا قُلْنَا بِوُجُوبِ ذَلِكَ كُلِّهِ عَلَى اللَّهِ. We said all these types, whether it be something that God has to do, or the person who is mukallaf has to do, or the third party has to do, all of them are necessary for God to provide us with favor and guide and grace. لأنه, because لولا ذلك, had it not been that God has this favor upon us, He would have disregarded His own purpose. لكان ناقضا لقرضه. It would disregard and violate His own purpose. You may say, then what is wrong with this? We say, no aqil, no rational and wise person who has a purpose then fails to do what is needed for reaching his purpose. If you want to do something, you make sure that whatever is needed for reaching that point would be taken into account. If you want people to come to your home, what do? You inform them, you invite them. Even if you think they need direction, you give them direction. If you think you need to send someone to bring them because they are not able to find the direction, they are not familiar with this city, even you send a rasul, a messenger to bring them. Yes? Or if there is a person that maybe he's hesitant to come to your home, but you have to tell him something important about his progress, you even give him some incentive. Say, I will reward you if you come to my home. I have prepared very delicious food for you, and I give you a gift, and free transport, just to encourage him to come. He's not going to do anything for you, but because you want him to come and meet you, and give him some important instructions. So if you really want him to come, you have to do anything needed, but you cannot arrest him and bring him, because then there is no point. La yablugul elja. So you give all the encouragement, all the incentive, but just let him still remain free. Because if you arrest him and bring him, it's not useful. He's not going to benefit from this. So, naqzul gharaz qabihun aqlan. Gharaz means purpose. So to violate, to disregard your purpose, to do something that would make your purpose not achievable is not acceptable rationally. Bayanu dhalik. Let us explain this further. أن المريد من غيره فعلا من الأفعال. The one who wants from another person to do something, okay? Murid, the one who wants. غيره, A wants B to do something. وَيَعْلَمُ الْمُرِيدُ, and A knows that al-murad means B, the one from whom you want to do this. لا يفعل الفعل المطلوب, he would not do the required, the favorite action. Matlub means the one, that action that you want. He doesn't do it unless A مع فعل يفعله المريد, A does something. So A wants from B to do something, and A knows that B is not going to do that thing except A does something extra. لا يفعل الفعل المطلوب إلا مع فعل يفعله المريد مع المراد منه. He has to do something with B. Like I told you, you have to send invitation, you have to send messenger, you have to give him some encouragement, some incentive. So you have to do something with him. من نوع ملاطفة. Sometimes you have to do ملاطفة. What is ملاطفة? From لطف. Means you have to be very kind with him. Yeah? Sometimes you have to be very kind. For example, there is a person, you want to teach him, a child, you want to teach him Quran. Either your child or someone in community. You cannot just say, I am ready to teach. Sometimes you have to make a cake, sometimes you have to take them to park, you have to do something, because this child would not come unless there is some kind of incentive. Mulatafatin or mukatabatin, you have to write to him. You have to send a message, text, or irsalin ilay. You have to send a person towards that person to bring him. Avasaya ilay. You have to go yourself. Sometimes you have to go knock the door of this person and say, please come. I want to teach you. Let us go together, for a walk. وَأَمْثَالِ ذَلِكَ, or anything like that. مِنْ غَيْرِ مَشَقَّةٍ عَلَيْهِ فِي ذَلِكَ. And without this being causing too much of trouble for him. If it's causing too much trouble for the person who wants to, A, then Roqala say, no, A doesn't need to go out of his way too much to bring B. For example, you want to teach this child Quran, you send a message, you send someone, you go and knock his door, you say, I will bring you to take you to the park, I buy this for you. But you don't need to then do too much. For example, sell your house and just, invite the children of town, and give them gift and, few thousands of pounds, No, something reasonable, not something that makes your life miserable. Okay? So there should be no mashaqqa. And of course, for God, there is no mashaqqa, just has to be reasonable. Otherwise, God has sent 124,000 prophets. He has done a lot for us. لَوْ لَمْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ. If he knows that he would not do it except with this extra, if he doesn't do this, مَعَ تَصْمِيمِ إِرَادَتِهِ, and his will is decisive. He has made decisive will. Sometimes you are not sure yourself. But if you definitely want this to happen, tasmeem iradati means your will is decisive. You are determined to do this. If you don't do this, لَعَدَّهُ الْأُقَلَاء نَاقِذًا لِقَرَضِهِ. Rational people say, you have disregarded your own aims and objectives, your own purpose. وَذَمُّوهُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ. They blame him. They say, if you really wanted this, and without mashaqqa you were able to do extra bit, why you didn't do it? وَكَذَا الْقَوْلِ فِي حَقِّ الْبَارِ تَعَالَى. This is general, And this applies to God the Almighty as well. مع إرادة إيقاع الطاعة. When God wants His servants to bring ta'ah, وارتفاع المعصية, He wants sins not to take place. لو لم يفعل ما يتوقفان عليه, if he doesn't do what bringing ta'ah and avoiding haram would need, لكان ناقضا لقرضه. Then God has violated or disregarded His own purpose. وَنَقْضُ الْغَرَضِ قَبِيحٌ. And it is immoral, it's not acceptable to do something which is نَقْضُ الْغَرَض, to disregard your own purpose. تَعَالَى اللَّهُ عَنْ ذَلِكَ. God is to be glorified with respect to it. God is too great, too high to do نَقْضُ الْغَرَض.
So what's the qarad that they're referring to here?
Ta'ah and irtifa'ul ma'asiyah, to do ta'ah and not to do haram, which is for the guidance of humanity, perfection.
But here, is it saying that
Taklif is lutf. Taklif is not gharaz. Taklif is lutf. Taklif is what you need to be nearer to ta'ah. Taklif by itself is not gharaz. Taklif is a way towards achieving your gharaz.
so here it's not referring to lutf there. It says لو لم يفعل ما يتوقفان عليه لكان ناقضا.
ما يتوقفان عليه then becomes necessary to provide with because of lutf. But this tawaqquf is not tawaqquf in the sense that without this you cannot do it. It means something that helps. You know that without this, still he can do it, but most of people would not do it. Yes. Question? We have one question here. And Alhamdulillah, still we have time. If you are not tired, we can continue. Yes. One question, Brother Mahdi. You have question?
Yes.
Two. Question? No. Okay. One.
I read a definition for isma.
Esma.
Isma. And it was that it's a special lutf given to people who deserve it. Now, how does that fit in with this? If we're saying that everyone gets given this lutf, then why doesn't everyone reach that level of isma? Or is it, for example, the level of lutf that Allah gives?
We don't call it lutf.
It's not
It's a moheba, gift. Maybe that lutf.
to even to take to
Pardon?
Sending prophets and imams is a
Lutf, yes. Esma is a gift, but that gift comes when you qualify for it. You know, for example, we give a grant for anyone who gets A. So the one who gets B or C shouldn't say, why you didn't give me the grant? We say it's a grant, it's a gift, but this gift needs to qualify for it. If someone doesn't do any haram intentionally, then God would help him not to do haram even unintentionally. But if you are doing haram intentionally, then you say, God help me not to do haram even unintentionally. God says, go and study. You can then answer your own question. Yes.
the grace of God, does it have a connection with regards to justice? Is it that because God is just, therefore He
No. It's more than justice.
It's more than justice.
It's wisdom. Because He has a plan for us. His wisdom requires to help us with extra bit. As I said, your teacher wants you to learn, to become a learned person. Okay? So not only he would teach you, he would also encourage you to do mubahisa, to study other books, to take notes, to do homework. Okay? These are extra things that teacher does, not because of justice. It's not that if he doesn't do this, you can say, you did zulm to me. It's not a matter of zulm. It's a matter of he has a purpose, and for that purpose, he has to do this so that the purpose is achieved. It's more than justice. Lutf is higher than justice. Yes.
So just on that, often in terms of the ahkam or the kind of laws that Allah has given us in terms of this lutf to come nearer Him, we correlate them to justice of God. And that's why when some of the laws which are hard for us or difficult we don't understand, we say, is this justice of God to do this to us? Is it just of God? So should the question be therefore that we should say to ourselves that actually we can't understand this, this is part of a wider plan and it is hikmah. Is this the answer that you could give to somebody when you come up against the challenges of some of the areas of fiqh or laws, especially with young people?
It depends on the issue. So some issues in fiqh, maybe people wonder how it is compatible with justice. Some issues might be something about wisdom. So we have to find the question. For example, some people may say, is it just that a daughter inherits one portion and a son inherits two portions? So someone might say, is it just? And we can explain that this is just, or we can say that even if we don't know how it is just, because we trust God's understanding, then we can trust this. But sometimes it can be a matter of wisdom. So we have to see what is the question. For sure, no one has any right over God so that he can say God has been unjust to me. But there are issues that God himself may have undertaken. For example, he says, if you do this good action, I will reward you. Then if he doesn't reward us, then it is zulm. Because he has promised us to this. Otherwise he could have said, you have to do it and there is no reward, but you have to do it. Because we owe him a lot. Yeah? Even if he doesn't reward us, still we had to do it. But he's kind and he says, I don't only ask you to do this for my sake. I'm going to reward you. Like, Allah gives us everything. Even Allah gives us ourselves to ourselves. But then it says, مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا. Who is the one who is going to give me qarzul hasanah? Okay, this is his kindness. But now that he says this is qarzul hasanah, he has to give back. Because he himself said, yeah, it's a promise that this is qarzul hasanah and I'm going to give you back. He could have said, no, just give it to me because I have given you a spend in the way that I tell you. It was acceptable, but he's kind. He says, lend it to me. Yes. Question?
There's one question I had.
Yes.
What does iqa mean? The word iqa.
Iqa means to make it happen. Have you heard wuqu'? Wuqu'. Waqa'a, wuqu' means to occur, to happen, is lazim. Iqa is muta'addi, means to make it happen. Iqa'u ta'a means to make obedience happen. Opposite to irtifa. Irtifa means to stop it happen, to remove it. Yes?
Does it apply to every human being, regardless of faith or religion?
What?
The lutf
Lutf of God? Yes. Any person, God provides him with guidance and anything they need for their happiness. But there, إِنَّا هَدَيْنَاهُ السَّبِيلَ إِمَّا شَاكِرًا وَإِمَّا. Okay, the next point, 6. This is also a very good discussion, and I'm sure this is something that you have been thinking about, ask maybe about. It's related to the issue of suffering, in the issue of problems in the life, yes.
This is exactly what I was coming to, that there's so many issues with regards to this that poses challenges within the Muslim community, with young people, which have led to incidences of people losing faith and coming away from Islam, even. Because, particularly around the area of suffering, or the answering of prayers, you see huge amounts of suffering in some people whose prayers are never answered, or what they perceive as nothing, whereas some people's prayers are. So, there seems on the surface of things, even if you try your best look behind the scenes or behind this, that there is a sense of somehow injustice. So I wanted to see, what do we direct this to? Or what is the ultimate thing that we can refer to? Because it's something that is a challenge to answer. To be honest.
Yes. We have discussed this, this in different classes on the issue of existence of evil in the world, suffering.
Yeah.
We had it in Aqaid many times. But partly also here,
Yeah.
we discuss it inshallah today and maybe also next week. That if there is a pain, someone is into pain and suffering, what God does as a requirement of His justice. This is something that inshallah we discuss today and next week. Yes. Yeah.
People sometimes have a disease in their heart, Allah increases it for them.
Yes.
Why would you say that's not the other way around, that God will provide lutf or some sort of guidance to try and bring them back towards guidance or the right path?
Sure. So first, if there is disease, God provides you with help. But there are people that they insist on remaining ill. Therefore, their illness increases. And because we believe in Tawhid Af'ali, we say God is increasing their illness. But indeed, it's not that God wants to increase, it's that you are making your illness increase. Like when there is fire in your house, there is a room and fire has broken up. If you don't stop fire, this fire goes to other rooms, other floors. So you can say there was fire and fire spread. You can say God spread the fire because it's Tawhid Af'ali. But why God spread fire? Because it's a law of the nature that if you don't extinguish fire in the first place, this fire can spread. Otherwise, not that God is trying to burn our house.
You see, the way it's translated, it makes it sound very much like people. Someone's done something bad to me, so I'm going to let him suffer alone.
Yeah. So this is why people need to study properly. If you just read Quran without studying properly, then you may misunderstand. So we always encourage people to have systematic study, because even listening to member is good but not enough, because member gives you bits and pieces. You need to have systematic, structured, continuous study with mubahasa so that inshallah you learn. Because if you don't do mubahasa, imagine if I'm teaching you everything, but there is no one to check with him, no one is going to question you, challenge you, you think you understood, but you haven't understood. So it's very important to be doing mubahasa, to be tested, to be examined, to be challenged, so that you make sure that you understood. Yes.
So just on that point, that because it's Tawhid Af'ali, therefore everything goes back to God. So why do we have that in the Quran that whatever is good is from Allah, but whatever is bad is from yourself? Then the bad is from the self. So why here it says Allah is the one who is increasing the disease, but there it's saying if there is bad is from yourself.
Okay. So anything bad comes to you, although we can still say that God created this, but you are the one who has asked God to create this. If God gives us all the good things, imagine you are given very good ingredients, you are given good recipe, you are given time, you are given all the equipment. If you cook, who should be given credit? If you cook, good food, the main credit goes to the one who has given you all these things. Ingredient, recipe, has even created you, has given you all the equipment. You shouldn't be too proud of yourself, I made a good food. Yes, we give you a little credit. That Alhamdulillah, you didn't waste the food, you didn't burn the food, you didn't poison the food. But this is the only credit we can give you. The main credit goes to God, who has provided us with everything. But if you burn the food, you don't read the recipe carefully, you waste the ingredients, to whom we should send our blame? to this person. So, ma asabakum min hasanatin famin Allah. Whatever good comes to you is coming from God. And you have a role not to send it to others or waste it, Say, receive the good. Don't say, I don't want this good. Receive the good, be open to good, be appreciative. But anything bad comes from yourself.
So why in this verse then it says Allah increases the illness?
Because of Tawhid Afali. Because of Tawhid Afali. Indeed, who is punishing us? Those who go to heaven and those who go to hell. Who is responsible for pleasure in heaven in the first place? God. The credit goes to God. If you go to heaven and enjoy, you should thank God. Okay? But those who go to hell, they should blame themselves. They cannot blame God. If you benefit from all the things that, for example, a state is providing you with, parents, state, everyone has helped you, you have now become a good citizen. You shouldn't be too much proud of yourself because everything was provided. But if someone ends up in being in prison and has become a criminal, he should blame himself. Because a state, family, society, community have given me everything that they have given to that good person. I wasted my life. So, any good achievement, the main credit goes to God. You get a credit because you didn't waste it. But the main credit goes to God. But any bad thing, blame goes all to you. Maybe some people are also involved in this bad thing. They are also blamed. But God is not blamed. Okay. As-sadis, number 6. A beautiful discussion. And I hope you are not tired. Are you tired? No. Okay. في أنه تعالى يجب عليه فعل إبض الآلام الصادرة عنه. This is a very important discussion. It is about the fact that it is necessary for God in the way that we explain the meaning of necessary for God. It's necessary for God to do evaz. Evaz means return, but here you can like compensate. To compensate, to do something as a return for pains which are somehow issued or coming from God. God says you have to wake up early morning and do Salatul Fajr. Maybe it's cold, maybe you are sleepy. There is a little bit of pain. You have to fast. Maybe days are long, hot. There's a pain. So it's related to the issue of taklif. So for all the pains that you are going through, although these pains are for yourself, you are not doing anything for God. It is for your own self. But still God would compensate. Or if someone is born with some difficulties, still God would compensate. So, يجب عليه فعل عوض الآلام الصادرة عنه. It's necessary for him to do evaz. Evaz means return, like compensation for the pains which are somehow issued from him. وَمَعْنَى الْعِوَزِ. What is the meaning of evaz when we say compensation? Evaz means return, yeah? Evaz. An-naf', it means to give you a benefit, something that you enjoy, a benefit. Al-mustahaq, you deserve it. It's not something that you don't deserve. Because of that pain, you deserve this. But it is not reward. You remember, reward was an-naf'ul mustahaq, which comes with praising, ta'zim. Here, it doesn't come with ta'zim because you didn't do anything special. Okay? is compensation. When you hit someone's car and you compensate, you don't, praise also that person. Thank you for letting me to hit your car. Okay. So it's an-naf'ul mustahaq, but it doesn't come with ta'zim. Okay? So an-naf'ul mustahaq al-khali min at-ta'zim wal-ijlal. It's khali. Khali means empty. It doesn't come with ta'zim, means with praising and revering and honoring. Ijlal and ta'zim are the same. Va'illah. Va'illah means if God does not give compensation, He has to give yajibu. Because if He doesn't give this compensation, lakana zaliman. Na'udhu billah, it means that God is unjust. Ta'ala Allahu an dhalik. God is greater, too great to do zulm. How much this compensation should be? This, return, how much should be? يجب زيادته على الألم. It should be more than the pain. If you cause pain to someone for a good reason, you have to make sure that you give him extra, not just equal to pain. Extra. وَإِلَّا لَكَانَ عَبَثًا. Because if you just bring pain without anything better for him, this is not wise. This is not, it's an abath, means in vain. Okay? So, if I cause, for example, my children, my students, the people who are under my care, if I cause them to suffer for something, it has to be for something greater than just for something equal. For example, I may take some people for, for a trip. Maybe I ask them not to sleep, for example, for a few hours, we have to walk. But it has to be reaching a good point that really was so good that all these pains and sufferings would not match it. But if you just make them suffer and give them equal to their suffering, so they say, we wish we didn't come with you. Okay? You have to give them something more. And this is why in Hadith we have that when people see on the day of judgment what God gives them for their suffering, they wish their body was made into pieces by Caesar. So this is such a generous compensation. They say we wish we were suffering more, we had suffered more. Now we don't see that. But when you see the reward of God, you say, I wish I had suffered more. So the richest people are the people who have suffered the most. So يجب زيادته means زيادة العوض على الألم. It has to be more than the pain. Otherwise would be not wise. لكان عبثا. It's without, in vain, without purpose.
What's sadaratu?
Pardon?
Sadaratu. Al-alamu means pain. Sadaratu?
As-sadira
Sadira?
means issued.
Issued.
As-sadirata means those pains which are issued from him, means are originated by him, caused by him. Sudur. Sadara yasturu suduran. Okay, this is the main text. Now we go to the commentary. And alhamdulillah, we have time. So inshallah, if you don't mind, I try to finish this. أقول الألم الحاصل للحيوان. Even we are not talking only about human beings, because animals also suffer. Of course, Descartes. Have you heard Descartes? René Descartes, French philosopher. He had the idea that animals don't have feeling of pain, which is bad. It's not a good idea. We believe that animals suffer, and therefore you have to be careful. But he had this idea that they don't have feeling of pain. Al-alamul hasilu lil hayawan. The pain which is happening, which is there for any animal, إما أن يعلم فيه وجه من وجوه القبح. Either you know that this pain has one of the reasons for qubh, for ugliness. So it's a bad pain. فَذَلِكَ يَسْتُرُ عَنَّا خَاصَّةً. The pain which is immoral for one reason or another would never be caused by God. God would not make any animal, not only human beings, any animal to suffer without a moral reason. Okay? Just to bring pain without, unfortunately sometimes we make people or animals suffer without reason or without good reason. Even sometimes, unfortunately, we enjoy. People, for example, sometimes enjoy killing animals. Yeah? Sometimes children annoy cats and dogs and birds, unfortunately. But God would not be causing any pain to any animal unless there is a great moral reason for that. For example, God would let us slaughter sheep or goat for our survival. There is a pain for that animal, but that pain is not without good reason, because this is the way that we can survive. Okay? But you cannot burn animals, you cannot, keep them thirsty, keep them hungry. Even we have hadith, Amir al-Mu'minin says, you cannot even curse animals. Don't say, they don't understand. You cannot even curse animals. Or we have hadith that, for example, if you are riding on an animal, on a horse or camel, and then you meet your friend, don't start talking to your friend while you are on the back of the animal, because it's hurting them. When a horse is moving, it's possible for him, it's easy. But when they stop, it's difficult. Like you, when you stand for 5 minutes, 10 minutes and don't move, it's difficult. When you walk, it's easier. So animals, if you want to speak to someone, come down and speak. Otherwise, it's immoral. So, lots of care for animals. So, if there is any immoral aspect to this pain, it only can happen from us. Yasturu anna. From us it can happen, because sometimes we do immoral things. أو لا يعلم فيه ذلك. Or the second option is that there is no immoral aspect to it. Then this is possible. فَيَكُونُ حَسَنًا. It's possible. Sometimes there is a pain caused to an animal, but there is no immoral problem in it. You may say, how can be pain without immoral aspect? How can a pain be good? So we give you few examples. وَقَدْ ذُكِرَ لِحُسْنِ الْأَلَمِ وُجُوهٌ. There are few reasons given for when pain can be good. Okay? First, كَوْنُهُ مُسْتَحَقًّا. Sometimes people deserve the pain, like punishment. Someone has done something bad, is a criminal, so a criminal deserves pain. Of course, pain should be proportionate. You cannot make him suffer more. But anyway, there is a pain for it. Second, كونه مشتملا على النفع الزائد العائد إلى المتألم. متعلم بالhamza, not بالعين. متعلم بالعين means learner. متعلم بالhamza means the one who has pain, alam. Okay? متعلم بالhamza means the one who is suffering. Sometimes pain involves enough benefit which is za'id, which is a lot, which is more than the pain. And this benefit goes back to the one who is suffering. You know, I cannot accept causing pain to A because A is not benefiting, B is benefiting. This is not acceptable. You understand? Can we cause pain to A because B is benefiting? No. But you can cause pain to A if A himself is gaining more from it. Of course, in some cases, because in some cases we don't have the authority to do that. But for example, God, or for example, a father, a mother, a teacher, a doctor, sometimes they may cause pain for a greater good. Okay? You go to doctor and doctor gives you injection. But this injection brings pain, but for a greater good. Or mother asks their children to go to school. A child who is 6 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old, find it difficult to go to school. Yeah? But this pain is compensated by greater good, which comes out of this pain. So, sometimes that alam, that pain, involves benefit enough, which is za'id, which is more. To whom this returns? Al-a'id. Aada ya'udu means to return. This benefit returns to the one who has pain. Okay? But again, as I said, you have to have authority to do this. You know, I cannot, slap people and then give them some extra, good things. You have to have authority. I cannot, go to the street and inject people and say, I give you 1,000 pounds. There are people who have some authority. They can cause something which is painful, but for a greater good that comes to that person. But there should be authority. Like many governments, if they are just government, they ask you to give tax. It's painful. But why? For a greater good, because then they provide you with education, with security, with many things. Okay? So, you shouldn't be saying, no pain at all. Without any pain, we cannot survive. But what is important, that pain has to be something that leads to a greater benefit. Yes?
What about the pain that someone gives as a sacrifice for the greater good of a community?
Yeah.
Or the parent. So the pain is the pain feeling them through the hardships they're undergoing in order not for themselves but for something else to benefit.
That is the pain that you cause to yourself. That's different. We are talking about that can be also, of course, discussed in this discussion. But we are now more concerned about pain which is caused by someone else. But that is also possible to discuss. Because when you are volunteering for pain, even without benefit, you can do that, as long as you don't harm yourself. For example, you can say, I want to reduce my sleeping, even without any benefit to give to yourself, for example. I want to spend more time with people, but you cannot harm your health. Okay. Third, كونه مشتملا على دفع الضرر الزائد. Sometimes the pain leads to benefit, which has to be more. Sometimes it doesn't lead to benefit, but it leads to avoiding harm. Yeah? Sometimes there's a benefit. Sometimes we remove someone's tooth. Why? Because he has to be healthy. Sometimes, for example, a person's leg is now rotten and you have to cut it. There is no benefit coming from this, extra benefit, but at least you are avoiding greater harm, because if you don't do this or delay this, more harm is coming. So it's not that now by cutting this leg, a doctor cuts this leg, cuts off, a benefit is coming. No benefit is coming. This person is not going to be better off. You are just trying to avoid zarar. Is it clear? So the previous one was naf' and naf'u zaid. This is mushtamilan ala daf' zarar zaid. Yes.
Mushtamilan, I just want to know that word. What is it? What's the root word?
Means includes, involves. Shumul. Shumul means to include. Mushtamil means to include, to involve.
Can I?
Yes.
There's one thing else. Pain itself is protective for the body. When you get burnt, you move away.
Yes.
So you prevent the burn getting worse. When you get hurt anywhere, then now it sent a message, and you save yourself.
Sometimes.
So this is what.
Sometimes
happens.
pain is a kind of
Protection.
like warning. And those illnesses which have no pain are more dangerous.
Leprosy.
Because you don't realize.
Yes.
Yes.
Can we apply the same thing to, for example, natural disasters or other sort of greater suffering that people have as a community or nation? Can we apply the same? Is this applicable to that in that sense as well?
Yeah. So we will inshallah talk about this, that sometimes if it is coming from God, it's because of greater good which is coming, and if it is done by other people, then God still would compensate, because this world belongs to God, so God would bring those people who have done bad to us to justice, so that we get some compensation. Like if government has done something bad to you, for example, if government is making a road and your house is demolished, they give you compensation. If another person demolishes your home, government takes money from that person and gives to you. So if there's a justice then. So if God asks you to lose something, God will give you compensation. If another person is doing making you lose, God will make sure that justice is achieved. So when God is there, don't worry. In the end of the day, you are not going to lose. Arabi', the fourth reason for having moral pain, moral causing of pain, is كونه بما جرت به العادة. Sometimes something is customary, it's conventional, it's not, strange. For example, many times things, for example, they ask you to put your rubbish at certain time outside. It's painful because in that particular time maybe you don't want to do this. But this is conventional. You cannot take people to court saying, why you make me suffer? Let me be free. So sometimes there is order, okay? Or you go to bakery when there's fresh bread, you have to stand in queue. It's painful. Sometimes, especially early morning, we have to half an hour, 1 hour stand in queue. But you cannot, say, I need compensation. Okay? This is Hadi. This is Al-Khamis كونه مشتملا على وجه الدفع. This pain involves something which is helping with protection. It's very close to the third one, but means helping for protection. Okay. Now, these 5 types of pain are okay, are not immoral. Who can cause these pains? ذَلِكَ الْحَسَنِ. This pain causing, which is moral, can be coming from God and can be coming from us. The bad one only comes from us. The first type was immoral. That is only sadiran anna. Okay? We said yasturu anna khassatan. This good one can happen from us and can happen from God. Occur from us or from God. فَأَمَّا مَا كَانَ صَادِرًا عَنْهُ تَعَالَى لِوَجْهِ النَّفْعِ. That type of pain which comes from God, caused by God, for benefiting. We said, remember we said, عَلَى النَّفْعِ الزَّائِدِ. فَيَجِبُ فِيهَا أَمْرًا. There are two things needed. If God causes pain in order to help us gain something extra, two things are needed, two requirements are there. أَحَدُهُمَا الْعِوَزُ عَنْ. God should give us something in return. Okay? Because He wants us to benefit, He has to give evas, compensation. وَإِلَّا لَكَانَ ظَالِمًا. If God causes pain without giving us anything in return, this would be unjust. Ta'ala Allahu an. God is to be glorified with respect to injustice. And that evas, compensation, يجب أن يكون زائدا على الألم إلى حد الرضا عند كل عاقل. It has to be more, and it has to be that much more that every rational person would be pleased with. Okay? So it's not enough to be 1 epsilon more. So we gave you 1 epsilon more. No. It has to be something that I would be happy with. وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. So you should be pleased with. Of course, this ayah is not about alam, but in general case. So you should be pleased with. Okay? يجب أن يكون زائدا على الألم إلى حد الرضا, to the level of pleasure. So that person should be pleased, but not as a person or personal issue. كل عاقل. It's so much that every rational person would be pleased with. لأنه يقبح في الشاهد إيلام شخص لتعويضه عوض ألمه من غير زيادة لاشتماله على العبثية. Because it is immoral for, maybe there is a mistake in the typing, because this shahid doesn't make that much sense here. But shahid means the one who is witness. But I think there's a mistake in the, if you have another text version, maybe you can check. Anyway, what is morally understood is that it is immoral to ilam. Ilam means to cause alam, to make someone suffer, because we want to give, instead of his paining, without any extra, which is considerable, we just cause pain because it's abas. إيلام شخص لتعويضه عوض ألمه من غير زيادة. You cause him suffer and pain without give him something that deserve, or is worse. It's worse. This is abath. Second, اشتماله على اللطف. The second requirement for God causing pain for benefiting someone is that it should involve favor, grace. إما للمتعلم, either this person himself is benefiting from this, or another person. Sometimes another person gets a lesson from this. For example, sometimes, maybe this is a good example, maybe Maybe you can have a better example. But the example that comes to my mind is this. Sometimes a criminal suffers. That is the suffering caused by his crime. That gives you a lesson. For you, it's lutf. Sometimes it's not a criminal. An innocent person suffers because of what a criminal has done. And God is compensating that mazloom. But still, it's a lesson for other people to be careful about criminal people. Okay? You get a lesson from this. Even that mazloom maybe gets a lesson if he's still alive. He can get it, but sometimes he's killed. He will be compensated, but you will get lesson. For you, it's a lutf. So, it has to always be coming with some kind of favor and grace for at least another person. If not for the same person, for another person.
Like Imam Hussein, Safli Imam Hussein, he gained a lot, but we also gained a lesson from him.
Yeah.
Saved us.
Can you ever have suffering for a person that doesn't benefit them themselves? It might benefit other people as well.
That's the first type. Konu mustahaqan, because he has done a crime and he's punished, he deserves that. That's the first type. Konu mustahaqan.
Where it doesn't benefit them. But it still benefits them, right?
It benefits them in the sense that it purifies them, or they are not going to be punished in akhirah, for example, for that.
Yeah. So I don't
But this is not nafr. It's not that you want to give them benefit, you want to bring them to justice, but of course even justice can be good for them.
But it's still a type of lutf to them, right? So that they don't get as much punishment in the akhirah.
In some cases. But if that punishment is in akhirah and they are going to be there forever, then they are not benefiting from it. But if it is something that after that will be followed by forgiveness, then that's good. It has cleansed them. Hona fawaid, yes.
Sometimes it's very difficult. I think the key thing is that we talk about the pain, which is kind of like moral pain, which is through God. It is to be able to distinguish that from the other within the system of creation and within the system that we ourselves are in sometimes putting the pain on us. But you can't, it's not easy all the time within where there is a lot of suffering to see the moral pain in this.
Yeah, the one who suffers might be not able to see the beauty of this unless that person is very far-sighted. For example, when you have exam, very important exam, some people see the beauty of waking up for several nights, not going to cinema, to park, to meeting, to gatherings, and just studying and studying. Some people see the beauty of that. Many people don't see beauty for that, so the parents have to force them. Someone has to force them, otherwise they don't see the beauty of that. Pardon? So to say ma ra'aytu illa jamilan, or Allahumma lakal hamdu hamda shakirina laka ala musada. To be grateful for your suffering needs vision, farsightedness. Many people don't see that. At least they try to be not complaining. But to thank God is not something that everyone can.
Do they grateful because of the reward?
Pardon?
What's the reason, for example, Zainab says Mara Islam Jamila? Is it because she sees the reward out of this?
Reward is part of it, but it's more than reward. Because she sees that this is a great opportunity for the hidden beauties or treasured beauties of Imam Hussein and his companions to emerge. You know, sometimes in a human being there are beauties that only his enemies can bring out. You have to be challenged, and your enemy can bring out, because you would not bring out. You don't want to show off, and also in the normal time there is no way to bring it out. The enemies can bring out those things, and this is why Quran says sometimes they want to blow into the light which is set up by God to fire. يُرِيدُونَ لِيُطْفِئُوا نُورَ اللَّهِ بِأَفْوَاهِهِمْ. They want to extinguish this by blowing into that, but indeed when they blow, وَاللَّهُ مُتِمُّ نُورِهِ, the light becomes more. So enemies wanted to destroy Imam Hussein alayhi salam, but indeed what they did, they exposed the beauties which were there, and even many Shia had not seen at that time. There are many beauties in our Imams, but because they didn't have enemies like Imam Hussein, they have remained unknown to us. Otherwise, all the Imams were able to show that beauty, but they didn't have someone like those brutal people. وَهُنَا فَوَائِدْ. There are few points. One, al-ibaz huwa naf al-ula, because fa'ida is female. Fa'ida al-ula. The first benefit means the first point. Al-ibazu huwa naf'u al-mustahiq al-khali min ta'dhiman wa ijlal. This is what we had it in the text and I explained to you. Is the benefit which is deserved and doesn't come with ta'zim. What was the example?
When you crash someone's car,
Yeah. You compensate, but you don't, praise that person. فَبِغَيْدِ الْمُسْتَحَقِّ. So it's deserved. خَرَجَتْ تَفَضُّل. It's not a gift. Tafazzul means just favor. Gaid means this modifier. You add this modifier, you say. And naf, but not every naf. Al-mustahaq. His modifier is good in English? Qualifier. فَبِقَيْدِ الْمُسْتَحَقِ خَرَجَتْ تَفَضُّل. With this qualifier of mustahaq, deserved, so tafazzul is excluded, because tafazzul is not something that you deserve. وَبِقَيْدِ الْخُلُوِّ عَنِ التَّعْظِيمِ. With this qualifier that it should come without ta'zim, without praising and respect, praising and revering, because sawab is what is deserved, but it comes with ta'zim. Yeah, because someone has done something. He has listened to you and has done something. As-saniya, the first point finished. The second point, لا يجب دوام العوض. The second thing is, the compensation does not need to be continuous. Okay? لأنه لا يحسن في الشاهد ركوب الأهوال الخطيرة ومكابدة المشاق العظيمة لنفع منقطع قليل. There's a footnote here that it seems la is a mistake, is a typo, because the reason which is brought is not matching with la. Because the reason is this: he says the one who witnesses this, or according to common sense, it's not good to go through big difficulties and to undertake great difficulties for a little benefit which is stopping. Munqate means stopped. Qalil. So the reason is not matching the claim. So it has to be something like this. Compensation, I'm not saying it has to be continuous, but compensation should be something that is not too little and stops very soon. It should be greater than the pain, and therefore should either be continuous or at least to remain for a considerable period of time. Okay? You cannot keep someone, for example, under heat of sun for hours and just, bring him to a cool room for 5 minutes. If he has stayed there for a few hours, at least bring him in the cool place for a few days. Not necessarily for all the life, but at least should be more. Okay? So this is the second benefit. There is a mistake in the text. So you can write it like this, that compensation should be either continuous or at least should continue for some considerable time, because it's not good to make people suffer and then just give them something little for a short period of time. Third, al-'iwaz la yajibu husuluhu fi dunya. Compensation must be there, but it doesn't need to happen in this world. Sometimes it's better, actually, if you are patient, it's better that you receive the compensation in akhirah. Because in dunya, you would be given a worldly compensation. In akhirah, you would be given a heavenly compensation. Which one is better? Do you want to be given money, for example, in dunya, or reputation in dunya, or do you want to be given from heaven? It's better to be given there, because it's more valuable, it's more endurable, yeah, and greater. Al-'ibazu la yajibu husuluhu fi dunya. Compensation doesn't need to happen in this world. لِجَوَازَ أَنْ يَعْلَمَ اللَّهَ الْمَصْلَحَ فِي تَأْخِيرِهِ. Because God may know. Many times people think, why my dua is not answered? Why, my suffering is not leading to any success? Don't be despaired. Don't think Allah has forgotten. Be patient. Either it comes later in dunya, or if it is better for you, it comes in akhirah. You have to be patient. Unfortunately, sometimes we are not patient, and then we may even keep asking God, and God may give us, but then we realize that it was not good. It's not better if it's given. There is a hadith that when people see what Allah gives them for du'as which were not answered in dunya, they say, I wish none of our du'as were answered in dunya. Okay? So which one is better? Is if you are given in akhirah. Yes.
Just one point about the previous point about being proportionate. How come then the other way around? For example, a human being sins for 70 years, for 80 years, but the punishment that he gets in the hereafter, it's not proportionate to the little amount of years that he sinned in this world. It's going to be for eternity.
It's proportionate.
And eternity, one he gets punished.
Yes. Because of few things. One is that this person's intention was, as we have in one hadith, that if he was living more, he would have done more. Secondly is that sometimes even in dunya, in 1 second you can make a person blind. So all his life suffers. You cannot say, my punishment has to be 1 second. I killed him in 1 minute, you have to just punish me 1 minute. Okay, you've killed him in 1 second. We also decide in 1 second that you have to remain forever in hell. It's proportion. If it's a matter of time, so in 1 second we decide this. So we have to measure the harm which they have caused. How much harm they have caused, And punishment definitely is not more than that. من جاء بالسيئة فلا يجزى إلا مثلها. It should be the same. الرابعة. No, sorry, I didn't finish the third. So لا يجب حصوله في الدنيا. It doesn't. Yes.
Sorry, people who do commit sins, Allah punish them for like to like, not with extra, but obviously if you do.
If he punishes, sometimes he forgives. But if he punishes them, it would not be more than their.
So that's not justice. Does that account for Allah's love, for grace, His mercy, when it comes to reward and punishment? But then on the day of judgment, it is said that Allah is the greatest judge and He will judge with justice.
Yeah.
We also ask that Allah doesn't judge with justice for us; He judges us with mercy.
So when it comes to justice, He's just, but He can be also merciful judge. So He doesn't do zulm, but He can forgive. So He doesn't make any unjust decision, but if He's forgiving, it's not against justice.
It's just sometimes people say that some people do many sins, but and they say that, oh, we're gonna go to hell, but God can, like one small thing from them and put them in hell.
In heaven.
Yeah.
That one little thing has to be a very important thing. You think it's little, but it has to be something so good that would be, overweighing bad things that they have done. Anyway, for forgiving, God is very easy for forgiving. Ya sari' ar-rida. Ya man yaqbalu al-yasir wa ya'fu 'anil kathir. He accepts little good things and He forgives lots of bad things. If anyone is punished, it's because there was no way for God to forgive him. For sure, God doesn't want to punish anyone. Do you think any judge, of course we cannot compare judge to God, God is kind, merciful, but do you think any judge would be happy people are punished? If a judge is happy, then this has to be dismissed. If a judge, he says, Alhamdulillah, today I killed few people, or I sent few people to prison, this is not a good judge. A judge is never happy to see people are going to be punished. And God is a merciful judge, a forgiving judge. So, this is why Imam Sajjad said, Al-ajab kullu al-ajab mimman halak kayfa halak. If someone is, with all the grace of God, is still to be punished, and we are very surprised. So, the compensation does not need to happen in this world because lejawaz means possibility that God knows that there is interest in delaying. بل قد يكون حاصلا في الدنيا. Compensation can happen in this world, can happen not in this world, can happen in آخرة. قد لا يكون. الرابعة الذي يصل إليه عوض ألمه في الآخرة. The one that receives the compensation for his pain in the hereafter. Okay? The one who receives the compensation for his pain in the hereafter. إما أن يكون من أهل الثواب أو من أهل العقاب. Either he is a person who is a person of reward, means heaven, or a person of punishment. إن كان من أهل الثواب فيكفيه إيصال أعواضه إليه بأن يفرقها الله تعالى على الأوقات أو يتفضل عليه بمثلها. If he is a person of reward, he's a good person, then it would be sufficient for God to send his compensation to him in the way that God divides and gives it in different times to him. Or يتفضل عليه بمثلها, or God gives something similar to that. So either divides it and gives it different times, or gives something similar to that. وَإِنْ كَانَ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْإِقَابِ. But if it's a person who is going to be punished, so how we can give him this benefit? أَسْقَطَ بِهَا جُزْءًا مِنْ إِقَابِهِ. Part of his punishment would drop. God would drop part of his punishment. بحيث لا يظهر له التخفيف. But this would be dropped in the way that the punishment would not stop. Of course, this is what he says. Maybe we don't need to accept that. But he wants to say the punish, because he's a person who is going to be, for example, is going to be to hell. So he remains in hell. So it's not that they give all the benefit to him so that one day of hell becomes heaven. They divide it so that hell becomes easier for him. But it still remains hell. Okay? Yeah, so the pain, the suffering will be reduced. But by dividing it into time, over time, spreading over time, so his pain is reduced, but it's not given at one point, so that one point he has no pain, because he has to be in hell. Al-Khamisa, the last one. Al-alamu sadir anna bi-amrihi ta'ala. If we cause pain, because God has asked us, or ibahatihi, or God has not asked us, but God said this pain is okay. Wasadir an ghayr al-aqil, or pain is caused by someone who is not aqil, like animals. So sometimes it is caused by us, because God says, for example, you cause a pain to your child, you force him to do good things, or to wake up for salat, for example, in its proper time, of course. Or God has not asked you, but it's okay, he has permitted this to happen. Or an animal does this, or a person who has no aql does this. وَكَذَا مَا يَصْدُرُ عَنْهُ مِنْ تَفْوِيتِ الْمَنْفَعَ لِمَصْلَحَةِ الْغَيْرِ. Or a pain which is caused by God not letting us benefit from something because he wants to benefit another person. وَإِنْزَالِ الْغُمُومِ الْحَاصِلَةِ. Or grief and sorrow come to you without you doing anything. Anything like this. Either God has made you lose something because another person is going to benefit. God has asked people, or even non-rational people, anything that you have no role in causing that, God would compensate. Yeah? Imagine an animal has come and bite, and then you will be compensated. Another person has done this to you, you will be compensated. يَجِبُ إِبَضُ ذَلِكَ كُلِّهِ عَلَى اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. God will compensate for all of these things, لَعَدْلِهِ, either because of his justice, if he has said this or prescribed this, or كَرَمِهِ, or because of his generosity, if he has no role, another person, for example, or an animal has done this, he would compensate. Because this is something that has happened to a servant of God in this universe which is created by God, God would compensate. In Aqaid, I gave you an example. Do you remember the example I gave you? Why God should feel responsible to compensate for something that he has not done to you. The example was this. You invite someone to your home for feast. You clean home, you make very good food, you make yourself available. After he has this food, he says, I want to wash my hands. So, our washroom is in the first floor. When he wants to climb the staircase, he falls down and breaks his leg. What will happen to you? You feel very bad. You don't say, I'm not responsible, it's his problem. You say, no, because he is my guest, and this has happened in my house to my guest, I have to do my best so that I help him and would make sure that he would remember this visit of my house with good memory, so that he would be always pleased with me, satisfied with me. So he calls doctor, he pays for your treatment, he does everything for you so that you would have good memory of this generous guest. He so much shows mercy to you that when other people hear about this, they say, we should go to his house and break our leg. But he said, no, don't, be too clever. This is for people who were not responsible, not that you come and break your leg. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.